The diplomatic station floated in the darkness of space like a giant silver flower. Its metal petals stretched out in all directions, holding thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds. Lights blinked on its surface. Ships came and went like bees visiting a hive. It was beautiful, it was peaceful, and in less than an hour it would become a place of blood and fire. Lieutenant Cole stood at his post near the eastern observation deck. He was a human, which meant he was nobody important on this station. The Empire had only allowed humans into their space 5 years ago. They called Earth a developing world and treated humans like children who had just learned to walk, was used to the looks, the whispers, the way the tall, silver-skinned would step around him like he was a piece of furniture. He did not complain, he did his job, he watched, he waited. He kept his weapon clean and his mouth shut. The observation deck was empty except for him and the stars. Most beings were attending the grand reception on the other side of the station. Important people were meeting other important people. Deals were being made. Hands were being shaken, had not been invited. Humans never were. He checked his watch. 4 more hours until his shift ended. 4 more hours of staring at nothing. Then the lights went out. The darkness lasted only 3 seconds before the emergency power kicked in. Red warning lights painted everything in the color of blood. Alarms began to scream, pulled his plasma pistol from its holster and pressed his back against the wall. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. He had been a soldier before he became a diplomat's guard. His body remembered what to do. His communicator crackled with static and broken voices. He heard the words attack and Void Reapers and all units respond. The Void Reapers were terrorists. They hated the Empire and everyone connected to it. They had bombed stations before. They had killed thousands. Started moving toward the sound of gunfire. The corridors were filled with smoke and running people. Civilians screamed and pushed past him without seeing him. He was just another body in the chaos. He moved against the flow, toward the danger, because that was what soldiers did. He heard plasma fire ahead, then he heard something else, a scream, high and sharp and young. Ran faster. He turned a corner and found them. 6 Void Reapers in black armor stood in a wide hallway. They had weapons pointed at a door. Behind that door, someone was crying. Did not think, he did not calculate his odds. He simply raised his pistol and fired. The first Void Reaper fell before any of them knew what was happening, kept firing as he moved forward. A plasma bolt hit his shoulder and burned through his uniform into his flesh. He did not stop. Another bolt hit his leg. He stumbled but kept shooting. 3 more Void Reapers dropped. The remaining 2 turned to face him fully, threw himself behind a metal pillar as plasma fire melted the wall where he had been standing. He counted to 3, then leaned out and fired twice. Both shots found their targets. Silence fell over the corridor. 6 bodies lay on the ground, was bleeding from 3 wounds. His shoulder was on fire with pain. His leg could barely hold his weight, but he was alive. He limped to the door and forced it open. Inside, he found a small storage room. Hiding behind a stack of containers was a young woman. Her silver skin was pale with fear. Her large violet eyes were filled with tears. She wore a dress made of flowing white fabric that sparkled with tiny jewels. On her head sat a thin silver crown. Recognized her immediately. Everyone in the galaxy knew that face. Princess, youngest daughter of Queen, 3rd in line to the throne of the Empire. She looked at him with terror in her eyes. She did not see a rescuer. She saw a human with a gun and blood on his clothes. "It is okay," said softly. He put his weapon away and held up his empty hands. "I am here to help, we need to move." The princess did not respond. She was shaking too hard to speak. Heard more footsteps coming. More Void Reapers. The terrorists had come here specifically for her. She was the prize they wanted. They would use her to break the Empire. He had no time to be gentle. "Your Highness, I am sorry," he said. Then he moved forward and lifted her in his arms. She gasped at his touch. In culture, no common person was allowed to touch royalty. It was the highest crime, but did not care about culture right now. He cared about keeping this young woman alive. He ran. The princess was light in his arms, but every step sent agony through his wounded leg. Blood dripped from his shoulder and left a trail behind them. He could hear the Void Reapers following. They were getting closer. Found an escape pod bay. Most of the pods were already gone, taken by fleeing civilians. But one remained. One small pod with room for a single person. He put the princess inside. She grabbed his arm, finally finding her voice. "What about you?" she asked. "I will hold them off," said. He was programming the pod's navigation system, sending her coordinates directly to the royal fleet. They would find her. They would save her. "You will die," she whispered. Looked at her, his face was pale from blood loss. His hands were shaking now, but he smiled. "Maybe," he said, "but you will live, that is what matters." He sealed the pod before she could argue. Through the small window, he saw her pressing her hands against the glass. Her mouth was forming words he could not hear. Then the pod launched, carrying her away to safety. Turned around, the Void Reapers had found him. 7 of them stood at the entrance of the bay, weapons raised. He lifted his pistol. He had 3 shots left. "Come on then," he said quietly. He fired. The last thing remembered was falling. The cold metal floor against his cheek, the taste of blood in his mouth, and a strange feeling of peace. He had saved her. Whatever happened next, he had saved her. Then everything went dark. When the royal guard finally arrived, they found lying in a pool of his own blood. 3 dead Void Reapers lay around him. He had fought until his body simply stopped working. His heart was barely beating. His breath was almost gone. But his hand still held his weapon, and on his face was the smallest trace of a smile. The human had done the impossible. A nobody from a nobody world had saved the princess of the greatest empire in the galaxy. And that was when his troubles truly began, opened his eyes to the color white. White ceiling, white walls, white lights that hurt his eyes. He tried to move and found that he could not. His arms were locked in place by glowing bands of blue energy, restraints. He was a prisoner. For a moment he thought the Void Reapers had captured him. Then he saw the symbol on the wall, the royal emblem of the Empire. He was not in enemy hands. He was in Imperial custody. That made no sense. A door opened and a tall male entered the room. He wore robes of deep purple, the color of high nobility. His silver skin was darker than most, almost gray, and his eyes were cold like frozen water. He looked at the way someone might look at an insect. "The human wakes," they said. His voice was smooth and filled with contempt. "I am High Adjudicator. I am here to inform you of the charges against you." Stared at him. His mind was still foggy from whatever drugs they had given him. "Charges? What charges? I saved the princess." Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Yes, you did, and in doing so you committed crimes that carry the most severe punishments under Imperial law." He began to read from a glowing tablet in his hand. "Lieutenant Cole of Earth, you are charged with unauthorized physical contact with a member of the royal bloodline. You are charged with breach of sacred protocol. You are charged with presumption above your station." He lowered the tablet. "Do you understand these charges?" Felt cold spread through his chest. "I carried her to safety. I put her in the escape pod. That is the contact you are talking about." "You touched her royal body with your common hands," said. "You held her against you. You put your fingers on her skin. These acts are forbidden to all beings below noble rank. The punishment is death or lifetime imprisonment in the penal mines." "She would have died," shouted. The restraints buzzed with energy as he struggled against them. "The Void Reapers would have taken her. They would have killed her. I saved her life." His expression did not change. "Your reasons do not matter. The law is the law. It does not bend for humans who do not know their place." Understood then, this was not about justice. This was about hatred. Hated humans. He hated that a human had done what the royal guard could not do. He hated that a lesser being had touched his precious princess. This was punishment for being human, nothing more. Over the next 3 days was visited by several people. Human diplomats came and begged him to apologize. They told him to bow before the tribunal and ask for mercy. They told him that if he showed enough shame, they might reduce his sentence to only 20 years. "Think of Earth," they said. "Think of what this means for our people. If you fight this, it will make things worse for all humans in the Empire." Listened, he understood their fear. Humanity was small and weak in this galaxy. One wrong move could cost them everything. But he also understood something else. If he apologized, he would be admitting that saving a life was wrong. He would be saying that a human should have let the princess die rather than touch her. He would be telling the galaxy that humans were truly lesser beings who deserved to be treated like dirt. He could not do that. He would not do that. The tribunal was held in a great hall with walls of black stone and a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Hundreds of nobles sat in floating chairs, looking down at like gods looking down at a mortal. He stood alone in the center of the room, his wounds still healing, his body weak but his back straight. Stood at the front of the hall, wearing robes of judgment and a crown of office. He was the one who would decide's fate. The game was rigged from the start. Cole announced to the crowd, "You have been charged with crimes against the royal blood. The evidence is clear. You admit to touching Princess with your own hands. You admit to carrying her body. You admit to placing her in an escape pod without permission from any noble authority." He paused for effect. "How do you answer these charges?" Looked around the room. He saw the hatred in their eyes, the disgust, the certainty that he was nothing but a criminal who needed to be crushed. He also saw a few faces that looked uncertain, a few who seemed troubled by what was happening. They were silent, but they were there. "I answer with the truth," said. His voice was calm and clear. It echoed through the great hall. "I touched the princess because she was in danger. I carried her because she could not walk. I put her in that pod because it was the only way to save her life." He looked directly at. "I broke your protocol. I did not follow your rules, and I would do it again." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nobles looked offended, others looked surprised. No one had expected the human to stand firm. Raised his hand for silence. "You would do it again? You admit this freely." "I do," said. "That is what humans do. We save people, we help people. We do not stop to check their bloodline or their rank or their species. When someone is in danger, we act. When someone is dying, we try to save them." He paused. "If that is a crime in your empire, then your empire has forgotten what matters." The hall exploded with noise. Nobles shouted in anger. Guards moved closer to with weapons ready. Was smiling, pleased that the human had given him exactly what he wanted. "Silence," commanded. The hall went quiet. "The accused has shown no remorse. He has shown disrespect for our laws and our traditions. He has insulted the very foundation of our society." He straightened his robes. "I hereby sentence Cole to 30 years in the crystalline mines of 7. May his suffering teach other humans the cost of forgetting their place." Was grabbed by guards and dragged toward the exit. As he passed through the crowd, he heard whispers. Some were hateful, but some were different. "He saved her life," one voice said quietly. "This is not right," said another. "The Queen will hear of this," said a third. But the Queen was far away, fighting the Void Reapers in a distant sector. She did not know what was happening to the man who had saved her daughter. By the time she found out, would already be in the mines, already broken, already forgotten. At least that was what believed. As was led to the prison transport, he thought about his home. Earth, blue oceans and green forests and cities full of noise and life. He thought about his mother who had cried when he left for space. He thought about his father who had told him to always do the right thing no matter the cost. He had done the right thing, he knew that in his heart, and whatever happened next, no one could take that from him. The transport doors closed. The engines hummed to life, sat in his cell and watched the stars pass by through a tiny window. He was a prisoner now, a criminal in the eyes of the Empire. But he was not ashamed. And somewhere in the galaxy, a princess was remembering the human who had carried her to safety. The human who had smiled at her even as he was dying. The human who had saved her life and asked for nothing in return. She was not going to let him suffer for that. Not if she could help it. Princess stood at the window of her recovery chamber and watched the ships move across the sky. Her body was healed. The doctors had fixed every wound, erased every bruise, restored her perfect silver skin to its natural beauty. On the outside, she was the same princess she had always been. On the inside, everything had changed. She could not stop thinking about him. The human, Cole. She remembered his face in the red emergency lights. She remembered the smell of his burning flesh as he carried her through the corridor. She remembered his smile, tired and bloody and somehow still kind, as he sealed her in the escape pod. "You will live," he had said. "That is what matters." Those words haunted her. She had grown up in palaces, surrounded by servants who bowed to her every wish. She had been taught that she was special, that her blood made her better than common people. She had believed it. Why would she not believe it? Everyone around her said it was true. But Cole had not bowed to her. He had not treated her like a goddess. He had treated her like a person, a scared young woman who needed help, and he had helped her without asking for anything in return. He had been ready to die for her. No one had ever done that before, not really. The royal guard protected her because it was their duty. The nobles praised her because they wanted her favor. Everyone wanted something from her. Cole had wanted nothing. He had just wanted her to live. And now he was being punished for it. Turned from the window and walked to her door. She pressed her hand against the panel to open it. Nothing happened. She tried again, still nothing. "The door is locked, Your Highness," a voice said from the speaker in the wall. "High Adjudicator has ordered that you remain in your chamber until you have fully recovered." "I am fully recovered," said. "Open the door." "I am sorry, Your Highness, I cannot do that. The High Adjudicator's orders are clear." Felt anger rise in her chest. She was a princess of the Empire. She was third in line to the throne. And she was being locked in her room like a child by a man who had no right to command her. She understood what was doing. He wanted to keep her away from the tribunal. He wanted to sentence before she could speak in his defense. He was afraid of what she might say. He was right to be afraid. Walked to her private communication terminal. It was meant for official messages only, and every message was monitored by station security. Would know if she tried to contact anyone important. But there were other ways to send messages. Had studied many things in her young life. Languages, history, politics, and technology. She knew how to hide a message inside another message. She knew how to route it through channels that no one watched. She had learned these things because she was curious. Now they would save a man's life. She sat down and began to work. First, she needed to find the security footage from the attack. It took her an hour to break through the encrypted files. What she found made her cry. She watched fight the 6 Void Reapers in the corridor. She watched him get shot once, twice, 3 times. She watched him keep fighting. She watched him break down the door and find her hiding like a frightened animal. She watched him lift her gently, so gently, and carry her through the chaos. She watched him put her in the pod. She watched him smile at her through the glass. She watched him turn to face the last group of Void Reapers with only 3 shots left in his weapon. And she watched him fall. The footage showed everything. Every wound he took, every drop of blood he spilled, every second of pain he suffered to keep her safe. No one could watch this and call him a criminal. No one with any heart could see this and say he deserved to be punished. Wiped her tears and began to compose her message. She wrote to her mother, Queen. She wrote about the attack. She wrote about and his hatred and his twisted use of the law. She attached the security footage, all of it. Then she added one final line. "Mother, this human saved my life. He burned for me. He bled for me. He was ready to die for me. And now they are sending him to the mines because he dared to touch me. If this is what our laws do to heroes, then our laws are broken. Please help him." She sent the message through hidden channels, bouncing it off a dozen relay stations so it could not be traced. It would take time to reach the Queen. Hours, maybe a full day, but it would reach her. Now could only wait and hope. The days passed slowly. Heard news of the tribunal through the walls. She heard that it refused to apologize. She heard that he had been sentenced to 30 years. She heard that the prison transport had already left the station. Each piece of news was like a knife in her heart. She was failing him. She was too slow. The message had not arrived in time. Then on the 3rd day, everything changed. Was sitting by her window when alarms began to sound. Not attack alarms, arrival alarms. The kind that announced the coming of someone very important. She looked out at the stars and saw a ship emerge from hyperspace. Not just any ship, the largest ship she had ever seen. A vessel of black and gold that stretched across the sky like a great serpent. Its weapons were visible even from this distance. Its engines burned with the light of captured stars. The Throne of Stars, her mother's personal flagship. Pressed her hand against the glass and smiled through her tears. The Queen had received her message. The Queen was coming, and the Queen was angry. Across the station, looked out his own window and saw the same ship. His silver face went pale. His hands began to tremble. He had planned for many things, but he had not planned for this. The Queen never left her flagship during a military campaign. The Queen never came to deal with small matters like a human criminal. The Queen had more important things to do. But here she was, coming for him. Tried to tell himself it meant nothing. Perhaps the Queen was here for other reasons. Perhaps she wanted to see her daughter. Perhaps this had nothing to do with the human at all. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. He had made a terrible mistake. He had punished a man for saving the princess, and now the princess had told her mother. And Queen was not known for her mercy. The throne of stars moved closer and closer. Its shadow fell across the station like the shadow of judgment itself. Shuttles began to launch from its bays, carrying soldiers in golden armor. The Queen was not just coming to visit. The Queen was coming to take control. Watched the shuttles approach and felt hope bloom in her chest. Was on a prison transport somewhere in space heading toward the mines. But the Queen had the fastest ships in the galaxy. She could stop that transport. She could save him. If she wanted to. If she believed he deserved to be saved. Had faith in her mother, was strict and sometimes cold, but she was also fair. She believed in justice. She believed in honor. And she loved her daughter more than anything in the universe. When she saw that footage, when she saw what had done, she would understand. She had to understand. The first shuttle landed on the station. The doors opened, and Queen stepped out into the light. She did not look happy. She looked like the storm before it breaks. She looked like the moment before the sword falls. She looked like the end of everything that had been and the beginning of something new. She looked like wrath wearing a crown. And she was heading straight for the prisoner transport control center. The prison transport shook as something grabbed it from outside, looked up from the floor of his cell, his chains rattling with the movement. The other prisoners were screaming, thinking they were under attack. The guards were running back and forth, shouting orders that no one followed. Stayed calm, he had already accepted his fate. Whatever was happening now, it could not make things worse. He was already heading to a place where people went to die slowly. Then the ship stopped moving entirely. The engines went quiet. The lights flickered once and then switched to a strange golden color that had never seen before. One of the guards walked past his cell and saw the fear on his face. Pure terror, like he had seen a ghost. "What is happening?" asked. The guard looked at him with wide eyes. "The throne of stars, the Queen's flagship, they have taken control of our ship." He swallowed hard. "The Queen herself is coming aboard." Felt something strange in his chest. Hope. He tried to push it down. The Queen was probably coming to make sure he suffered properly. She was probably coming to spit on the human who had dared to touch her daughter. But a small voice in his head whispered other possibilities. The transport's main door opened with a sound like thunder. Golden light poured in from outside. Heard footsteps, slow and steady, coming closer. The other prisoners went silent. Even the most dangerous criminals in the Empire knew to show respect when royalty approached. Then she appeared. Queen was tall even for her silver skin seemed to glow with an inner light. Her hair was white as snow and fell to her waist in perfect waves. Her eyes were deep violet like the princess's, but harder, colder. Eyes that had seen 400 years of life. Eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. She wore armor made of black metal and gold, the battle dress of a warrior queen. A thin crown of silver sat on her head, simple but beautiful. She carried no weapons, but she did not need them. Her presence alone was enough to make everyone in the room feel small. She walked through the transport like she owned it, which of course she did. She owned everything in the Empire, every ship, every station, every planet, every life. She stopped in front of Cell. For a long moment she just looked at him. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no pity, no judgment, just cold examination like a scientist studying an interesting insect. Looked back at her, he knew he should bow his head. He knew he should show submission. But something in him refused to do that. He had done nothing wrong. He would not act like he had. Their eyes met, human brown against violet, common blood against royal blood, a nobody against the most powerful being in the galaxy. The Queen's lips twitched. It might have been the beginning of a smile. "Open this cell," she commanded. The guards rushed to obey. The energy bars flickered and disappeared. Chains fell away. He stood slowly, his muscles aching from days of sitting on the cold floor. The Queen stepped closer to him. She was taller than him by half a head. She looked down at him with those ancient eyes. "You are Cole," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You saved my daughter's life." "Yes, Your Majesty." "You killed 9 Void Reapers with a standard-issue plasma pistol and 3 wounds in your body." Blinked, he had not counted. "If you say so, Your Majesty." The Queen circled him slowly, looking at him from every angle. The other prisoners watched in stunned silence. The guards did not dare to breathe. "I watched the security footage," the Queen said. "I watched you fight. I watched you burn. I watched you carry my daughter through fire and death." She stopped in front of him again. "I watched you seal that pod and turn to face certain death with 3 shots left in your weapon." Said nothing, there was nothing to say. "Why?" the Queen asked. Her voice was softer now, almost curious. "Why did you do it? You did not know my daughter. You had no duty to protect her. You could have run. You could have saved yourself. Why did you stay?" Thought about the question. He thought about all the clever answers he could give, all the political things he could say to make himself look good. But this was the Queen. She would see through lies. She would smell false words like smoke. There was only one thing he could tell her. "The truth." "Because she was scared," he said. "I saw her face when I opened that door. She was just a young woman who was terrified and alone. It did not matter that she was a princess. It did not matter that she was and I was human. She needed help. I could help, so I helped." "Even knowing you would die." "Even knowing that?" shrugged. "Where I come from, that is what you do. You do not let innocent people suffer when you can stop it. You do not walk away from someone who needs you. That is not who we are." "Who we are?" the Queen raised an eyebrow. "You speak for all humans." "I speak for the humans I know," said. "For my father who worked 3 jobs to feed his family, for my mother who nursed sick neighbors for free, for my friends who died in wars protecting people they never met." He met her eyes again. "Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes. We hurt each other. But when it matters, when the fire is burning and the darkness is closing in, we reach out our hands to help. Every time, even when it costs us everything." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Her face was still unreadable, had no idea if he had helped himself or hurt himself. He had simply told the truth. Then the Queen turned to face the guards and prisoners and everyone else on the ship. "This man," she said, her voice ringing through the transport, "has been sentenced to 30 years in the crystalline mines. He has been called a criminal. He has been told that he broke sacred protocol by touching royal blood." Felt his heart sink. She was going to confirm the sentence. She was going to send him to the mines herself. "That sentence is suspended," the Queen continued. The transport erupted in gasps and whispers, felt dizzy. "This man will return with me to the station," the Queen said. "There are matters that must be addressed, questions that must be answered, and a certain high adjudicator who must be reminded of the full meaning of our laws." She looked at one more time. This time there was definitely something warm in her eyes, something like respect. "Can you walk, human, or do you need to be carried?" Felt a laugh bubble up in his chest. For the first time in days, he smiled. "I can walk, Your Majesty." "Good." The Queen turned and began to march back toward her shuttle. "Then follow me, and do not fall behind. I have waited long enough to deal with this foolishness." Followed her. His legs were weak and his body was tired, but his spirit was strong. He did not know what was coming next. He did not know if he was truly saved or just being given a different kind of punishment. But the Queen had come for him. The most powerful being in the galaxy had stopped her ship and walked onto a prison transport for him. That meant something. Behind him, he heard the other prisoners whispering. "Who is that human? What did he do? Why does the Queen care about him?" Did not answer. He just kept walking, following the golden light of the Queen's armor through the dark corridor of the transport. Whatever came next, he was ready. He had told the truth. He had stood by his actions, and now, for better or worse, his fate was in the hands of a queen. He could only hope that her heart was as strong as her crown. The great hall was full once again. Every noble on the station had been summoned by royal command. They sat in their floating chairs, whispering nervously to each other. No one knew what was happening. No one knew why the Queen had come, but everyone knew that something important was about to take place. High Adjudicator stood at the front of the hall, trying to look calm. He was failing. Sweat glistened on his silver skin. His hands shook slightly inside the sleeves of his robes. He had prepared a speech. He had practiced his excuses. He told himself that everything would be fine. He did not believe it. The great doors opened, and Queen entered the hall. She walked alone, without guards, without servants. Her black and gold armor caught the light and made her look like a creature from legend. Her face was calm and cold like the surface of a frozen lake. Behind her came Cole. The hall exploded with noise. Nobles shouted questions and protests, some pointed at with disgust. Others stared in confusion. The human had been sentenced. The human had been sent to the mines. Why was he here? Why was he walking behind the queen like a guest instead of a prisoner? "Silence," the queen said. She did not shout, she did not need to. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Every mouth closed, every eye turned to her. The queen walked to the center of the hall and stopped, stood a few steps behind her, his head high, his face showing nothing. "I have returned from the front lines," the queen began. "I have left my soldiers in the middle of a war. I have crossed half the galaxy in 2 days. Do you know why?" No one answered. "I came because of a message from my daughter." The queen's eyes swept across the hall. "She told me that a man saved her life during the Void Reaper attack. She told me that this same man was sentenced to 30 years in the mines for the crime of touching her." She paused. "She sent me the security footage of what happened." Stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if I may explain." "You may not," the queen's voice was ice. "You will speak when I tell you to speak. Until then you will be silent." His mouth snapped shut. The queen raised her hand, and a holographic screen appeared in the air above the hall. The security footage began to play. Everyone watched. They watched fight the Void Reapers. They watched him get shot again and again. They watched him refuse to fall. They watched him carry the princess through burning corridors. They watched him seal her in the escape pod and turn to face his death. When the footage ended, the hall was silent. Some nobles looked ashamed, others looked moved, a few were crying. "This man," the queen said, pointing at, "was willing to die for my daughter. He did not know her. He had no duty to protect her. He was a human, a member of a species that many of you consider lesser. But when death came, he did not run. He stood between the darkness and my child, and he fought until his body broke." She turned to face. "And you, High Adjudicator, looked at this man and saw a criminal. You looked at his sacrifice and saw only a chance to punish a human. You twisted our laws to satisfy your hatred." Her voice grew harder with each word. "You used the sacred protocol against a hero." Fell to his knees. "Your Majesty, I was only following the law. The law says that no common person may touch the royal blood." "I know what the law says," the queen cut in. "I know it better than you, it seems, because the law also says something else, something you conveniently forgot." She began to recite from memory, her voice ringing through the hall like a bell. "Any being who preserves the life of royal blood through sacrifice of self shall be elevated, honored, and bound to the crown as kin protector. Their debt shall be repaid with titles and land and eternal gratitude. Their name shall be written in the book of heroes. Their blood shall be considered noble from that moment forward." The hall went completely still. "This law is older than you," the queen continued. "It is older than this station. It was written by my ancestors to honor those who give everything for the crown. It has not been invoked in 300 years because no one has earned it in 300 years." She looked at, "Until now." Was shaking visibly. "Your Majesty, that law was meant for heroes, not for humans." "The law does not say, it says any being." The queen's eyes burned with cold fire. "You are a high adjudicator. You are supposed to know the law better than anyone, but you did not know this. Or did you know it and choose to ignore it because the hero was human?" Could not answer. Both options damned him. "You cherry-picked the laws that served your prejudice," the queen said. "You humiliated a hero to feed your hatred. You shamed the Empire in front of the entire galaxy. And you did all of this while I was burying soldiers who died fighting the same terrorists that this human stopped." She stepped closer, too. Her shadow fell over him like the shadow of death. "High Adjudicator, you are stripped of your rank. You are stripped of your titles. You are stripped of your lands and your wealth and your name." Her voice dropped to something quiet and terrible. "You will spend the rest of your life in the crystalline mines of Seven, the same mines you prepared for this human. Perhaps there you will learn what it means to suffer for someone else's hatred." Guards in golden armor stepped forward and grabbed. He screamed and begged and cried, but they dragged him away without mercy. The nobles watched in stunned silence. Some of them had been friends. Some of them had supported his sentence against. They all suddenly looked very worried. When the doors closed behind, the queen turned to face. "Coal of Earth," she said formally, "come forward." Walked to the center of the hall. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He had no idea what was about to happen. The queen looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she began to bow. Not a small nod, not a slight inclination of the head. A full bow, deep and formal, the kind that royalty gave only to those who had earned their eternal gratitude. The Quran, the sacred gesture of supreme honor. The nobles gasped, some of them fainted. No one had seen the queen bow to anyone in living memory. "You saved my daughter," the queen said as she straightened. "You bled for her, you burned for her, you were willing to die for her. There is no gift great enough to repay that debt, but I will try." She raised her voice so the entire hall could hear. From this moment forward, Cole is no longer a common human in the eyes of this empire. He is kin protector to the royal house. He is granted the title of lord. He is given lands on the garden world of Prime. He is given a seat on my council and a place at my table. She smiled, the first true smile had seen on her face. He is family. The hall erupted in noise again, but this time it was different. Some nobles cheered, others clapped. A few still looked angry, but they did not dare speak against the queen. Felt dizzy. This morning he had been a prisoner heading to the mines. Now he was a lord, a noble, family to the most powerful dynasty in the galaxy. "Your Majesty," he managed to say, "I do not need titles or lands. I just did what anyone should do." The queen's smile grew wider. "And that, kin protector, is exactly why you deserve them. Our empire has forgotten that heroes can come from anywhere, that courage does not care about bloodlines, that the measure of a person is not where they come from but what they do when it matters." She put a hand on his shoulder. "You have reminded us of these things. That is worth more than gold." A door on the side of the hall opened and Princess entered. She was wearing a simple white dress, no crown, no jewels. She looked like a young woman, not a princess. She walked straight to, ignoring all protocol, ignoring all the staring nobles. She took his hand in hers. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Looked at her hand holding his. A week ago this touch would have been a crime, now it was a gift. "You are welcome, Your Highness." She corrected him. "My friends call me." "Then you are welcome." The princess smiled, the queen smiled, and slowly smiled too. He was a long way from Earth. He was surrounded by aliens who had thought he was nothing. He had been shot and burned and imprisoned and nearly broken. But he had done the right thing, and in the end the right thing had won. The story of Cole, the human who became nobility, spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Some species laughed at it, others feared it, but many, many more began to look at humans with new eyes. If one human could do this, what else might they do? What other heroes were waiting to emerge from that small blue world called Earth? The galaxy was about to find out. And somewhere in the shadows, forces that had watched humans with contempt began to watch them with something else. Something like fear. The human age was beginning. And no one was ready for what came next.